Since we're happy with this setup for the sunlight look, let's start a new iteration to try something new. The next look we'll try out is a purely indirect light setup in that it'll be just soft light coming through the windows. The next setup we'll try out is going to be based on an HDRI backdrop actor, and we won't have hard sunlight, and instead we'll just have an environment outside that we want to motivate soft light through these windows. Let's create a new level for this iteration by clicking up here in the levels window, create new, empty level, and I'll call this lighting HDRI version 1. And we can just toggle the sunlight level off and switch to unlit. And we'll need to bring in that actor I was just talking about, this HDRI backdrop. So I've just searched for that there, and I'll click and drag it. And I'll also just zero out the location in this situation. So what we've got here is a convenient blueprint that combines the geometry for a sky dome with a skylight that reads a convenient cube map right here. So let's go back into the room and switch to the lit view mode. And the first thing we'll want to do is actually bring back the PPV we had previously set with the sunlight look. We'll want all those ray tracing settings done, and we've already done that hard work, so let's just copy it back. So back in the levels window, I'll turn on the sunlight level. I'll select the PPV for the sunlight, copy it, and turn off the sunlight. And since we're currently engaged in the HDRI sublevel, if I hit paste, it pastes it in this level. And I can just rename this HDRI. Great. So we've got all those settings back, and we're looking at a pretty bright scene. So this HDRI backdrop has a skylight built in here. And if I click in that component, we can scroll down, and I'm going to zero out this intensity just to start out. You'll notice we're getting some accurate reflections, kind of like before. And this is useful because if we were to switch out the cube map, which I can do by just clicking on that backdrop itself, and I'll search for the Ostrich Road cube map that's built in, but you can obviously use anything you want. What's great is this will update all the reflections. They're all accurate. Essentially, we've got an emissive static mesh purely for reflections. And if we want to bring in some ambience, we can with that skylight. So if I slowly bring this up, maybe 0.3, you'll see we've got a soft ambience here. And while it is nice and we've got ray traced ambient occlusion to help out, this isn't really as directional as I would like it to be, even though it's a purely soft light setup. I want to be able to feel that the light's coming from the windows and not have it be uniformly lit like this. So the easiest way to do that is going to be with the rect lights. Unfortunately, we can't get that same shading from the skylight that we got in the sunlight setup, as in that scene, the skylight interacts with the direct light and sky atmosphere actors to give us that. Whereas here, we can't really combine that and global illumination at the same time. But that's not really an issue because let's just use rect lights to do what we want instead. I'll start out by zeroing out the intensity again, and I'm just going to copy those previous rect lights, or we'll just copy one of them. So I'll turn the sunlight back on, go back here, copy that first one, and back in our HDRI, just hit paste, and there we go. We've got it back. I am, however, going to start organizing these new lights. I'll just drag this to the root here, and let's just grab those two we had set and call those HDRI. The backdrop is going to be part of that environmental motivation, and the rect light is an emulated light. All right, so now we've just got this rect light illuminating our scene. And this is nice because we can kind of feel the fact that it is coming from that window. But there's a few things I do want to change. If we check in the details panel, let's zero out the indirect lighting intensity just so we can see what the actual light is doing. So actually not much right now. And previously we were using it just for subtle ambience, whereas now we actually want to feel it on this wall a little bit. So I'm going to switch to the brush wireframe view mode, hit G so I can see this, and let's change the source width just a little bit so it's a little more directional. Great. I'm also going to bring the attenuation radius up to the max there. Okay. So now we've got a light. I can actually see what it's doing, and we don't have GI enabled just yet for the light, but we'll bring it back in a second. So I don't necessarily want it on the ceiling that much. Can bring it a little closer, maybe not that close. That kind of feels nice, where it's a bright sky and some soft light shining in. Color temperature wise, maybe let's warm it up to something like 8,000, just a little bit. And now we can slowly bring in that indirect lighting intensity so we can get some of that global illumination back. So we actually don't need much in this situation because this is a little bit of a moodier setup. Maybe something like 0.2. And then now, just to bring up the overall ambience in the room, we can use that HDRI backdrop skylight component right here. And we had zeroed that out, and now we can just bring that up. 0.1, even 0.1 might be too much, 0.05. And let's call it 0.1. Great. So that gets us in a really good spot in which we just ever so slightly can feel that there's light on the wall here coming from this window, but we've got that just generic soft ambience from outside. If we wanted to, we could duplicate it and put it over there. I won't just yet, as I'm happy with the way this looks over here. One last little tip I wanted to show that kind of helps judge how this room is being lit is to turn off all of these props and all of the objects in the room. So depending on the environment you end up lighting, it may be a great idea to use layers for this. So I've got that all set up. If I just click Window, Layers, I've set up a layer here that contains all the objects in the room except for the set walls. So if I turn this off, now we've just got this. And this is a great way to kind of preview this room for photorealism. So it kind of helps us discern what doesn't really work. For me, what isn't quite working yet is this back wall, as that's just getting the global illumination. So that's just something to note, but that may not be an issue based on your camera frame. If I just switch back to the sunlight now, so I'll turn HDRI off and sunlight back on, you can quickly see the other look. And this is also a great way to just quickly go between the two. This might be a situation where we know the sunlight might look more photorealistic, and just getting it to this stage right here will help you with that decision. Let's just bring the set design back and head back over here, and we'll just end with the HDRI. It is a darker scene, but remember, if we needed to, we could just change the exposure in our HDRI right now. Maybe something like 9.5. And that already looks a lot better, just something like that. So we'll call it there with this look because we don't need to go too far just yet. We'll do a lot more work with the MetaHuman. But that was a really quick iteration for some soft light through the windows.